All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pabpreng from Techsauce, and welcome you all to the Origin Asia conference on panel discussion about cultivating innovation. And okay, joining us today, we have three distinguished panelists. The first one, Mr. Santos. He is Assistant Vice President of Portfolio Operations of Kickstart Ventures. He led all their innovations in supporting their portfolio companies and working with the corporate network. And the second one is Ms. Rachel Loud, co-founder and chief investment officer of IHL Ventures in Malaysia. She is Southeast Asian VC investing in high growth startup. And last but not least, Mr. Clarence, founder and managing partner from Origgin Ventures from Singapore. Clarence helped deep tech startup to grow and start commercialization. So let's get started with our goal, which is to explore various ways and suggestions for fostering the supportive and growth-friendly tech startup ecosystem. Okay, the first session is I would like to talk about the future of startups and VC investment in our region. We are all from the same region, right? One region with diversity. So to bid first, in terms of CVC, what kind of startups or innovation do you want to see in the future?
So as a CVC, like one of our big beliefs and just the way that we work and kind of recognizing the startup and like business ecosystem of the region, we firmly believe that a big, not necessarily a critical element, but a big advantage that startups can take in the region is working with corporates, right? We are a bit of a top-heavy economy in the region, and so a big part of what we do is helping the startups that we invest in a lot of the startups that we work with, and finding win-win opportunities and working with corporates. And being able to leverage their expertise as well as their reach, so that they can reach a larger audience and gain a better and smoother path to success.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, great start. So, Rachel, what are you positioning yourself in the near future?
So for us, we've been investing in Southeast Asia in the last 5 years. We've diversified from venture equity to venture debt portfolios. We've been quite active in the markets in the last 5 years, and we've seen a lot of the growth in Asia being captured in Southeast Asia, given where U.S.-China trade relations have been. And so it's been quite interesting and quite, encouraging for us to see the growth recently. We anticipate Southeast Asia to still be one of the biggest growth driver in the world. I think a lot of it comes from harmonization of policies, from regulations, but also the will of all the Southeast Asians wanting to work together, and obviously a stable politics in the next 5 years. I think each country already has a change of government or a change of prime minister. It looks relatively stable for now. So I think, we're encouraged by that.
Are there any specific industry you would like to highlight?
Sorry, say that again?
Are there any specific industry you would like to highlight?
Say that again, sorry?
Specific industry.
Specific industry. I think, we've seen, the revolutionizing of Uber and Grab on the transportation space. We've seen a lot of healthcare insurance companies. But again, we've invested a lot in food and agriculture in the last couple of years, because, COVID kind of broke the supply chains between consumer and businesses. But I think what has been most interesting and very hot recently is semiconductors. Malaysia is the 6th largest semiconductor country in the world. We've invested in quite a bit of semiconductor businesses as well. And so we do see that Southeast Asia being a big beneficiary of, trade and technological transfers into our region. And so benefiting from that, not just from a people standpoint, but also as an overall investments are coming in a big way.
Okay, thank you. Clarence, how about the deep tech situation?
Yeah, okay. The Origgin, we are in the deep tech space, early stage, originated from the universities. So we are actually present in quite a few countries, except for Philippines. I think we are Malaysia, we are in Thailand, we are in China, we are also into Japan. So over the past 2-3 years since the COVID, we realized that there are some shift from the VC's interest into particular sector, I think I can classify it into two general category. One is the general tech, one is deep tech, because we are involved in deep tech since 2017. So deep tech definition is defined by something like IP that's backed by scientific research or engineering discovery, right? So patents, defensible by PhDs, by professors. So this the term deep tech we define by that purpose. And general tech are things like, in Malaysia or in Singapore, they are Grab, in Singapore, they are Shopee, US, they have Uber. These are more the general tech definitions. So I realized that the shift from a lot of VCs, not only just in Southeast Asia, in China, in Singapore, they are shifting more from general tech to deep tech space. In particular, deep tech space, they are looking at sector like agri-food tech, especially in Singapore, because we are a small country. We need to be self-sufficient, so we need to be very strong in growing our own type of food in a limited space. So agri-food tech is one area that's quite hot, especially in Singapore and also in Thailand, agri-food tech. And the other area we are talking about, anything to do with sustainability, like advanced material, like a new energy or new type of batteries. These are areas that the VCs are looking at right now, and I also wish to see in the future, like a lot of EVs are coming up. Battery is an important component. And of course, the third area I see that quite hot right now is talking about AI. Many years back when we started invest in AI in 2017, it was a start from AI. Then after about 2-3 years, it dies off. Recently, because of the ChatGPT, the AI things coming back again. So AI area is also another trend that right now VC are looking at. And last but not least, which is quite important, because in Southeast Asia, we have a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, maybe a few countries are aging, including Singapore and Thailand also, aging population, Japan, China as well, aging population. So MedTech, bio is also another area, or I would say these are the areas that a lot of VC are now hunting for this type of technology. So I would say the trend are moving on to this direction. So likewise for us, when we invest in deep tech, I think we are looking at these few areas: agri-food tech, sustainability, new energy, AI, MedTech, and bio. So I would say that the trend are moving towards this area. Yeah.
All right, we can now see their focus and their roles. They are starting from our venture builders to the far right, the VC, and the CVC, the closest to me. So right now, let's deep dive into the current stage of the Southeast Asian tech ecosystem. Are there any challenges you would like to address? I mean, what are the missing pieces in Southeast Asian tech ecosystem? This round, can I go to Rachel first? What are the missing pieces in tech ecosystem?
I think the biggest missing piece is probably investment into Southeast Asia right now. There's been a lot of investment into accelerating seed and early stage businesses, but there's no follow through. And when I say that, it's people going into accelerators, and again, a lot of governments actually have invested quite a bit in accelerators, but have not followed through in terms of, looking at, B, C, growth stage or debt companies. And I think that's one, but also the other thing is also investing into GPs. And so for you to have a good investment opportunity, you also have to have good investors. And so even if we had the best startups and there's no good investors, it's not going to be as helpful. Another thing is, then the ecosystem around it, lawyers, fund accountants. And so I think for Southeast Asia right now, we've invested a lot in early stage companies, but again, we're forgetting that the rest of the world needs to help them to grow. And so we've been a bit lackluster in that. Having said that, I think things will come naturally. It's just not as fast as we had hoped.
How about the CVC perspective, Bit?
Yeah, I think building on that, right? It has been, I think we can probably all agree, since we all invest in startups. It has been a challenging time to invest in startups recently. The bar has been raised ever since the economic downturn, right? The minimum, profitability, sustainability of the company has to be much better than it was before. So I think there is a lot of dry powder, but a lot of investment activity needs to pick up again. But just go back to your question. I think one of the biggest missing pieces as well is talent, right? I don't think like it's a piece that has been solved. It's a very recurring concern like over the past several years. But my take on it is that I think, especially what I see in the Philippines, and I think you kind of see it in Vietnam, in Indonesia. There's a lot of raw talent available. It's just that it's not very developed talent. I think there's a lot of talent that hasn't gotten the opportunity to get exposed to, what good looks like, right? There's not a lot of talent who has been there and done that you would see in the more developed tech ecosystems, that would kind of be able to develop the rest of the talent pool, right? So I think a lot of startups, you see what a lot of startups are doing now is they're trying to bring in these talents from these more developed countries. And I think we need to give the rest of our talent pools the opportunity to get exposed to these guys, so that we can then level up and kind of raise, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so hopefully we can see that happen for the tech talent as well.
So the tech talent with experience, right? Not the raw one. We are ready to develop the raw one, but we also need more experienced one.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the talent gap is more an experience gap than anything.
Are there anything you would like to add about the talent gap?
Yeah, talents, of course, is one of the key factor, but different country in Southeast Asia, there are different missing pieces, because I cannot say that in general, of course, they are under our early stage deep tech so-called concept, when we create a startup from the universities, we have few formulas or few pieces that is key to really make the ecosystem successful. So for example, in my space, in the deep tech, because we are involved in very, very early stage, originated from the university's IP, we actually need 3 pieces in general to make it work and vibrant. We call it the PAP, right? But not the Singapore, the governing party, but we are talking about we need the public, which is the government support, right? The grant and the infrastructures, the network provided by the government to link up the right, ministry or industry. So the government side is quite important. The second jigsaw puzzle pieces in the jigsaw puzzle is academic. Academic, that means we need, because we are deep tech, we need IPs from the universities. So we need a lot of talents, a lot of so-called, not only just in the scientists, we need maybe the management team. So this is academic, the second pieces. The third one, but not last, is the private sector. We need the venture builder, venture creator, accelerator, VC, venture cap, and all these things to make it successful. So if you ask me, because I was doing quite a fair bit of work in the Southeast Asia, if you look at the country specific, in China, I just came from China, from Shanghai, I flew in yesterday. China, out of these 3 pieces, they miss out the 2, I would say the major component, the private sector. They don't have VC to invest in the very early stage at this point in time. So the money, of course, there are things going on between the US and China, and a lot of funds are actually flowing out from China. So to invest in a lot of deep tech startup in China, basically they are quite lacking in the early stage venture cap area. So this is one very big jigsaw puzzle that I observed in China, for example. In Southeast Asia in particular, I think Singapore is a little bit more complete. We have the government strong support. We have the strong academic. A few top universities are located in Singapore. So we have a lot of talent, IPs from Singapore. And we have a lot of international VCs, early stage investors like us based in Singapore. So in Singapore, a little bit more complete. If you talk about Thailand, I would say same thing. Early stage VCs are lacking. Government are trying very hard to come in to support, but they're still lacking maybe one major piece, which is the early stage venture capital. Like Malaysia, I think is getting there. Private VCs, government are trying to put the act together to support. So I would say different countries, they face their different challenges. But in general, we will need about three pieces to make it work, to create a vibrant ecosystem, which is the public, the academic, and the private. This is how we see the entire thing under the deep tech early stage so-called venture co-creations. Yeah.
Okay, great. We can see that we need three missing pieces to put together to make a full, complete picture. How about Rachel? Are there any pieces you would like to add into the picture?
Actually, the funny bit is I think tech talent in Southeast Asia is pretty good. And so that's a bit of a difference. But the difference is I think a lot of tech talent lack exposure. And if they've never seen a problem before, you can't expect them to have the same reaction or feedback as someone from a developed markets, right? And so when we bring a lot of the talent from as a fresh graduate and give them a lot of exposure, so in our company, we hire a lot of fresh grads and everyone thinks I'm absolutely crazy on doing that, and we train them from young. But what I've given them more leeway is go meet more people. The more people you meet, the more you talk, the more startups that you see, you know what is good and what is bad. And so having that exposure is extremely important. I don't feel like in Southeast Asia we give people that latitude. And so having that ability to understand what is outside of what you've learned from a textbook perspective, but also at the same time, what your normal job is very helpful. And so again, just using Malaysia as an example, we've had Intel, Micron, Seagate, Western Digital that have invested in Malaysia for 50 years. So in terms of engineering talent, we're top class. But they know hardware engineering, but they don't know software engineering. So if you say there's a lack of smart people, that's probably not true. But they probably lack the talent of doing programming. And so maybe, down to Clarence, what Clarence said, we should just give them more exposure into, software engineering courses. And I don't think it's very hard to do because I think if you can build a bridge, you should be able to build a software.
Okay.
Just to add to that, right? So, because my background is in tech, so this is a topic that touches close. So, once upon a time, I was a homegrown tech talent in software development, right? And so every time this topic comes up, it pains me a little that people say, there's not enough tech talent, there's not enough quality tech talent. And to your point, I think there really is quality tech talent that just haven't done these things that they need to do before, right? And whenever you're talking about a venture-backed business, there are expectations about growth, about how quickly it achieves success. And unfortunately, I've seen so many, even within our own portfolio, there's so many companies where they have the talent there, but they don't have the time to figure it out. And unfortunately, usually the quickest way to figure things out is to bring in someone who knows, right? And so it's unfortunate that, we see a lot of tech talent who, like, I would believe 100%, if given enough time, they would figure it out. But just the nature of the business and the nature of how we need things to go, they're not given the opportunity.
Well, another thing is also, like, my sister works for Spotify, and she was there pre-IPO. She's not coming back. And so she's definitely born Malaysian, but the reality of it is people are not coming back. And the reason why people are not coming back is because one, the technological gap is too big, and two, therefore the pay is also too big. And so how do we motivate people to pay a little bit better and be on more par? I mean, Malaysia and Singapore I'm now 3.5 times cheaper than him in everything, right? And so there's a gravitation of high-skilled labor, especially in tech talent, to be in places like Singapore or London or the US because you get paid 5 times more. And that's just on a dollar-to-dollar parity. And so I think, we need to be a bit more cognizant that despite everything, monetary concerns do drive a lot of all these issues and can be solved in a very elegant manner. Malaysia has now done, an increase of minimum wages, and that's helpful. And then, inflation has crept up, but, inflation has crept up along the way for everybody anyway. So I think, having some of these things that are more commercial is helpful. And then, like the rest of the things, despite everything, I do think that, first of all, everybody needs to be taking care of their family and, themselves first, and then everything else will come very naturally.
Okay, I see that is a long-term strategy. We need long-term strategies to help fix the lack of talent in Southeast Asia. Are there anything you would like to add, Clarence? to bring back the talent to the region, as we are the key player in the situation right now?
I think for us, because these, investors, they are quite wide, right? You have venture capital, you have a PE guy, you have a CVC guy, angel investors. But for us in particular, I would say because our focus is deep tech area. So deep tech area is talent intensive, no matter what, right? Because in deep tech, we need more than the normal general tech startup in terms of the skill set. We need the scientists, right? We need the scientists that come out the IP with backed by scientific research. We need the engineer. Why we need an engineer? Because we need to scale up the entire so-called the technology. Because from lab to the so-called to the world, the scaling up is a key factor. We need the so-called the management team. We need the business guy. We need the CEO to raise funds. So normally what we do is we will not force the scientist or the engineer to be the CEO. Because most of the time in Thailand, if you know, the university's professors, normally they are the CEO of the company. Yeah. But normally they are not the best guy to be the CEO of the company. So in Singapore, for example, we were under the venture co-creation concept that we created with the universities. We would like to form teams to complement each other's weak point. That means scientists, like professor, they be the scientists. Engineer could be maybe the corporate guys that comes in to augment the professors to upskill, right? Then we have the commercial guy, the business school. We work with Sakshin, for example, in Thailand, to bring in the talent, to lead the company, to raise money, to be a CEO. So how we overcome the lack of talent, that means maybe Elon Musk or maybe Bill Gates, they can handle everything, right? I mean, they are far and few. What we can do is to overcome this, is to putting in the right people, forming a team to drive the deep tech startup. So this is how we overcome talent challenges. I mean, of course, we can have talent coming from Singapore, talent coming in from Thailand, that kind of stuff, right? We have to mix and match to make sure the deep tech startup can thrive and move forward. So we put in a team to run the deep tech startup. That's how we do it. Yeah.
All right, okay, we can now see that if we could solve the talent problem, we could make them exposed to the ecosystem, we could make them have more experiencing by giving them the mentorship or any supports from the big company. So I would like to ask more about how, if they already seem to putting together a team of good talent with good experience, what is the next thing they could do to make themselves more attractive to the investors? You can start from the CVC.
So, like, one of the ways we think about this within the Kickstart team, and maybe not like specifically what we can, like any one person can do, but like what an ecosystem really needs, and maybe there's a bias of being from VC and, you know, growth. But, you know, one thing we think will really help is that you need at least one big success. You need one big success to kind of break that glass ceiling for everyone else and kind of prove that it can be done where we are. It can be done in the Philippines, it can be done in Malaysia, it can be done in Vietnam, right? So you kind of saw that in Indonesia. They were a bit ahead of the curve, and obviously in Singapore, where, you know, the rapid emergence of unicorns. But that does, like, these big successes do a number of things. One, it proves to investors that there is like real opportunity there. Money will go in. It proves to founders that it can be done, and that's what good looks like. It proves to talent, both locally and abroad, that there's a real opportunity in tech companies in that market, right? So being able to support these big success, being able to find these big successes and support them all the way, I think that is like a big step towards, you know, the kind of future that we envision.
Okay. How about
I'm going to say, how do we define success, right? Our region probably do not need as many unicorn as somewhere like the US. That's number one. Because it's a small and medium-sized business environment. And I say every region is very different. Southeast Asia is definitely very different from the US and China, because the markets are not one market, one culture, one monetary system, one legal system. And so Southeast Asia as a whole is lots of very, very, very small businesses made into one very big region that is very investable if you're able to kind of invest in that. And so I think we have to be mindful to say that in Southeast Asia, success looks very different in a sense that we might not have unicorns, but if we've got 20 really successful smaller tech companies, that would be a success. In Penang, and for some reason, we've been very successful in building semiconductor businesses, but it's not one huge name that you recognize, but there is 20 good names that you can recognize, trading anywhere between $1 to $2 billion US dollars, which again is very encouraging. But also because of that, around it, there's been another 100, 200 businesses that are supporting these 20 really big businesses in Malaysia in the semiconductor space, only in Penang that kind of exports out overseas. And so the way I would think about Southeast Asia is very different from how I would think about the US or China, where we only glorify unicorns and not worry about the SMEs, because the reality of it is the economy is just so different. And has to be recognized for its differences and diversity.
Great, you have picture, give me a big picture of how the Southeast Asian should look like. And how about Clarence, what is your definition of success of Southeast Asian startup?
Attractiveness to the investor, right, you're saying? The question, right, early on you're saying. I think the question I would say it depends, because different investors, different appetite, different mandate, right? For example, you have VC that interested in late stage companies, you have VC interested in general tech company, you have VC interested in very early stage deep tech, you have angel investors just want to support the founders, right? There are many reasons, and also the attractiveness of the startup varies to each and every so-called investors. But I would like to channel the audience into a particular area, because I'm in the deep tech area, so I can speak for my deep tech area. What attracts us as a deep tech so-called early stage investors are only 3 areas, because I've done deep tech so-called venture creation investments for over 7 years, since 2017. So we only look for 3 things, because we are doing very, very early. We are going into the lab, going to the universities. Normally the TRL or technology readiness level is only 3 to 4. It's very early stage. I cannot use the VC's template to say that, okay, this is 20,000 checklists before I invest, right? So typically 3 things I look for that attracts us is basically 1, IP. Do they have a strong defensible pattern? Have they done many, many years of research in this particular domain? Are they deep enough? Most of them will say first of its kind. So what it attracts us as a deep tech venture creator or investors, first is the IP itself, strong. This is very important for us. Starting point is always the tech itself. The second thing that attracts us is the team, the researcher. Are they reputable? Are they credible? Have they published a lot of good journals? Okay, these are the team of people that we have to leverage on them heavily to make sure that the technology can take off with the support. So the second part that attracts us is the team, the scientific research team. The third one is, of course, important to us is whether the tech itself, the market size is big enough for the tech or not. I mean, if let's say what we call the total addressable market of the tech itself is less than maybe $1 billion in our so-called evaluations, less than $1 billion, then I would say that it's not so sexy for us. Why? Because it might not be big enough to sustain the startup. Might as well just license to a corporate, right? Okay. So when you look for 3 things that attract us is the IP, the scientific team, and the market size, whether it's big enough. So this is how we do our evaluations. Yeah.
Okay, great. And one last question. I would like you all to give me 1 word if you need to talk about the key strategy to build the growth-friendly ecosystem for Southeast Asian startup. Just 1 thing. You can go down the line. Just 1 key takeaways.
Okay, I'll do. I think innovation needs to be, so the 1 word is innovation, but I want to tackle innovation not just from a startup perspective, but also how we invest, how we look at companies, how we define success, and also how do we build an ecosystem holistically as a whole.
I think my word would be together. Right, I think like Angela kind of referred to it a while ago that you really need everyone in the ecosystem kind of aligned and working together. You know, I guess like to your point earlier, right? A success isn't one person, right? The success is really everyone. Success is where everyone is somewhat is successful, and kind of feeling good about what everyone is doing, where everyone is. So I think that's important.
Okay.
I think
The last one is always the difficult.
I resonate with Santos and Rachel, the togetherness. I think for us, early on I mentioned about we have to work together in the ecosystem to create, especially in the deep tech ecosystem, we have to work because we can't do it by ourselves alone. It's quite difficult to do a deep tech startup to create a vibrancy in the deep tech sector. We need remember I say the three factor, right? The PAP, right? We need the public, the government support to create the infrastructure for us. To create, to provide grant, you know, to help the deep tech startup to get it off the ground. We need the academic, the talent, the research, the talent from the universities. Then the last but not least, the private people like the VCs, people like the venture creator like us. So we need to work together with these three jigsaw puzzles to put in together to make it work for the Southeast Asia deep tech ecosystems. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've got three words: innovation, together, and partnership. Thank you, our panelists. Please give them a big round of applause for the insightful about the tech ecosystem in Southeast Asia. Thank you.